Hello everybody and welcome back to another accessibility review. Today we're looking at a game called Interkosmos 2000. It's a space capsule simulating type game where you have to use all the buttons and switches in a space capsule to complete different tasks, as well as not die. You have to manage your life support and electrical systems and all that. I do believe there was a first game just called Interkosmos, but that was on PC only, whereas this is on Quest. I'm not sure if it's Quest exclusive, but I'm playing it on a Quest, so there's that. So first things first, we gotta get our space helmet, because otherwise we're just out here suffocating in open space. Let's put that on and close the helmet. Real quick, I do want to mention in the options menu, there is an accessibility section, okay, which means they are at least considering accessibility features. Now this is just where you can push the stick forward and backward and sort of teleport through the pod rather than having to pull yourself along like you'll see in a second. And then that's just a like a force grab, I'm assuming, where you can pull objects to you. So I'm going to keep those both off for now because we don't need them. But yeah, let's start with the tutorial. And I won't be going into the actual missions because the game is rather short and I don't want to spoil anything, but also the tutorial shows everything that needs to be shown. So we can go through each system and I can give you the good and the bad of each aspect of the game. So let's start with first steps.
Welcome, Cadet. You are now ready to face the final step of becoming an astronaut.
Here we are,
or
in the
cosmonaut,
capsule.
Depending where you're from. First, you need to get used to those bulky gloves.
Bulky gloves, I'm used to them.
Around.
See, these are the blue handles
Grab them and pull,
that I
or
was
push
talking about,
yourself
that
in
you
order
have to
to
pull
change the
yourself
position on the spaceship.
around.
Now pull yourself
So if
towards
you had
the
that
computer.
accessibility option turned on, you could just essentially teleport. You can teleport from like here to here, all the way back into the docking bay here. I can grab it. There we go. That way you don't have to do any of this. And I don't know if that's for a like mobility. It's a mobility thing or if it's a motion sickness thing. I'm not sure, but either way it's in the accessibility panel. What was I supposed to do? Oh, grab the wrench.
Good. The wrench might be needed if something breaks. You can attach it to one of the stickers to keep it from flying around. The computer in front can be powered on with the bottom left button.
So we're starting with the computer.
The column of buttons
Power that on.
the left changes the computer mode.
There's the map.
For now.
Okay, now here's where things get a little difficult. For your first time, once you know what all the buttons and everything do, it's not so hard, but for the first time, and it does show the square, it does highlight the button, but to read the buttons, I need to get pretty close to them, and see, like there, when it faded out, I can just tell that it says map. Though I don't know why it wants me to press the map button. Oh, the labels are below. Okay. So the top one is target map program.
The bottom row has different
See, I had to get pretty close to see that.
Selected computer mode.
And
Let's press the
the
next
closer
button
you
in
get
order
to
proceed.
things, so like the screen or the wall here, it tends to fade out. So like here for the, I don't even know what that says actually. I can't get close to that. That yellow light here, I can read that number. It's 10, but the light next to it, to do with the battery. But anyway, back to this part. What does it want me to do? Press that button. So you can't really read the screen because you can't get close enough to it. Now, obviously most people can read it without getting that close, but if you are low vision, like myself, it's going to be somewhat difficult.
On the left side of the computer, you will find a radio.
There's the radio.
That's where my voice comes from. Listen to it carefully. Your survival may depend on your correct understanding forgot the last command, push the button on the radio to hear it again. If you forgot the last command, push the button on the radio to hear it again. If you forgot the last command, push the just kidding.
Ha ha, very funny.
You should see a data pad. Grab it.
Here's the data pad that it wants us to grab. I'm gonna grab that off the sticker.
That should help if you forget what to do.
Now here's the weird thing. I'm gonna wait for this to stop talking. It's just saying there's a checklist.
Stickers above the screen.
Stickers.
Stick the data
Stick it to things.
to keep it from flying around.
Okay, so the computer just explained that this is the data pad, and it just has a checklist of things, and whenever you're unsure what to do, to just look at the data pad and there's a checklist. Here's the issue with the data pad. When you're holding it, because of everything is physical, you see your hands are physical, so I'm moving my hand around, but it's getting caught on the things here. And that was weird. You saw that? See, everything sort of gets caught on each other because that's just how the physics in this game works. But due to that, you can't get close to the tablet. Oh, can I just stick it in my helmet? Hang on. Can I? There we go. Oh, it doesn't stick. But anyway. Yeah, you can't get close to it. What you can do, stick it to something, and then, oddly enough, you can. Just the front of the, if you can see the front of the visor, that's still up, phases through it, and you can read that. Current procedure, yeah, so you can read that. And it does do the, if you get too close, but that's nothing to do with the pad, that's just the computer and the walls itself. And here are the controls. It's pretty basic. Just grab with your triggers. Push the index if you're having trouble grabbing. This isn't really accessibility related, but I notice a lot of people struggling. If you're having trouble grabbing things like handles, push the trigger and grab. It's supposed to be just you have to touch the trigger, but a lot of people don't touch the trigger and they're like, why isn't it grabbing? Just grab with both triggers. It's easier. So let's say next. And it's going to move us on to life support, I believe.
You can press the master alarm button to disable the sound of the alarm.
So that's the alarm going off. It's a nice audible tone, and you do have to get pretty close to it, but you can see right there it says LS, life support. There's LS, EPU, ALT, I'm not sure what that does, ENG, guessing that's engine, but right now it's life support, so press that to turn off the alarm.
But remember, in real life situations, this won't make the problem go away. You'll need to fix it. The life support system is located on the right-hand side of the cabin. Your breathing produces CO2. At high concentrations, it is toxic, so you need to filter it out in the cabin air. The current filter is unfortunately full and needs to be replaced. Pilot, take out the spent CO2 filter from the slot in the life support panel.
So it wants us to replace the CO2 filter in the life support panel. There is a red light that will tell you when it's full and needs changing. But there is a weird little... Nope, I don't want to do that. Put that over there for now. And replace the filter like it wants us to.
Good job. We will now regenerate the spent filter.
Okay, now it wants us to regenerate this filter. So, I didn't even realize this at first until I saw someone else do it in a video. That this black, on the inside, this sort of ring of black, what would you even call them, wedges? They're not wedges, I don't know. Little black sections. That indicates the fill. So as I'm cleaning it, those turn white again.
Let's get back to the front of the cabin.
So if you're trying to keep an eye on
What's
your
next on the computer?
CO2 filter, you're going to have to look pretty close at it. Though it's not really necessary to do that. The alarm will go off if there's too much CO2, and this fairly large red light will be on. So it is pretty easy to see when you need to change the filter. So let's just shove that in there for now. There we go. Okay, so now it's talking about if there is too much CO2 in the cabin, that you need to depressurize and refill all the air. With this, so I know I sound like a broken record with you need to get close, but you're gonna need to get close. These are actually pretty large
Use the decompression
little
valve
displays.
to
I mean, they're about the
raise
size of my
O2
hand.
level back to normal.
But the sections, the little color indicators, are just on the edge, so I have to get pretty close to look at them. And that one is obviously way up in the red. So I feel like if they could make those like more like pie wedges rather than just the edge, that'd be a lot easier to see just in general for everyone, not just me, because like I have to look close at it. But if you're looking at a glance, you might not know so easily if it's in the the yellow or the green, or it's getting in the red. But if it's a whole wedge, then you see that black needle in the red and you're thinking, oh, okay, gotta do this thing now. So let's do this. Let's get rid of the CO2.
Good. Now close the valve.
Okay. Back in the yellow.
As you see, the oxygen
And now we have
level
to
also decreased.
get the pressure and
The
oxygen back
valve
up.
should add O2 in the cabin.
So let's turn oxygen on.
That's enough. Now
Okay.
close the valve.
And pressure still needs a little bit, so let's turn on the
Remember to keep
hydrogen.
the amount of O2 in the optimum range. Too much oxygen can be explosive.
Did I say
while not
hydrogen?
enough, well, you
Nitrogen.
need it to breathe. Now observe the situation. Our O2 level is correct. The
Now all of
pressure
our
is
levels
too low.
are good.
Use the nitrogen valve
The
to correct
tutorial is
pressure in the cabin.
a bit behind. So that's another important thing the tutorial actually just said. Talking about the pressure affecting the temperature, which is actually a pretty cool mechanic. If the temperature is too low, the cabin will get cold, and if it's too high, the cabin will get hotter. There is this little heater thing that I guess helps regulate the pressure, or not pressure, the temperature. But this temperature screen down here is pretty tiny. Almost the size of the text labeling it. So you gotta get pretty close to see that. You won't notice from a distance or from a glance. You're gonna have to actively be checking that. Though, from my experience, it's not so. If you have everything else in order, the temperature isn't so much a big deal. And if it is something's and the temperature's too low or high, stuff will start happening. Things will start malfunctioning, and so you'll know something's up. So now it's talking about how if you use more power
Switch
than you're
one more
generating.
power cell on the power unit.
I'm getting to it. I'm talking to the people. If you use more power than you're generating, which I think is up here, output, yep, could barely read that, and load. So we're outputting 10 and the load is 15, which means, I guess that's what these lights are. I still don't know what they say, but I'm guessing it's like draining and filling. That's your battery.
Switch one more
Which is
power
down
cell
here,
on
which is
the
at
power
30%, well 29% now. So it wants me to switch on one more power cell, switch that
There you
on.
go.
There we
Always
go, now we're
observe
doing
the
20.
amount of
So
electricity
now,
produced and consumed. You don't want to discharge.
You should
Neither
be
to
going up.
overcharge the battery.
maybe, hang on.
If you do, this will happen.
Oh, I guess that's what that means. So whichever, oh,
The
Uh-oh.
currently used electricity bus will stop working. If this happens, switch the power bus.
I broke it. So I broke it, then I fixed it again.
You always want the secondary bus to be
And
functioning.
apparently, these lights do mean,
You can always
so
check
since
shift
we're
down
draining
on the
faster than
computer.
we're
Switch computer
using more
to
than we're creating,
diagnostic
that
mode.
light's on. And if we create more than we're using, that light's on. I don't know what happens if they're equal, but that's what it's at now. And I think these lights indicate when the battery is going to overload. It's at 76%. And once it gets full, this light will turn on, and once it's empty, this light will turn on. So that's kind of nice. You can just sort of look, and just based on these lights, sort of tell what's going on. You don't necessarily have to read them once you know what they are. The whole thing with this is that the first time user experience, when you don't quite know what you're doing, is the difficult part, because you're having to look at everything real close and figure out what everything is. Whereas, people with regular vision don't necessarily have to do that as much. They do have to look around and figure out what things are, but they can just sort of glance, like, okay, there, that thing is happening. Oh, yep, life support's over there. But with us, we have to look closer. So now it's talking about the what is this called? Stats? Oh, diagnostic. So this is a diagnostic screen on the computer, which is actually really helpful if you prefer not to read these gauges over here, because this essentially is the same thing. There is some numbers up here at the top that I don't pay attention to because they're really small, but here will tell you the CO2 level, the oxygen level, and the nitrogen level. So at a glance, it's larger. So if I'm working on electrical or something, or if I generally keep this page on the screen, that way when I'm moving around, if something's going wrong, I can look and say, oh, yep, there's definitely too much hydrogen. Hydrogen?
Pilot, hit the malfunctioning panel with the wrench.
CO2 is what I meant to say. So the great thing about this game is when something breaks, it's usually pretty obvious that it's broken. So like the electrical unit will start sparking, or you saw when the power goes out, it switches over and everything shuts down, so you have to automatically switch the bus that it's using, and the fuses, when they blow, they turn black and start smoking. And then in this case, the little navigation ball just starts going crazy. So whether it's that or a pipe bursting and venting a whole bunch of gases, it's pretty easy to tell what thing is malfunctioning. Okay, so now it wants me to start flying the ship and select a target and all that to fly to. Before I do that, I forgot to mention, another great thing about this game is there is a dedicated recenter button, so you don't have to constantly hold your Oculus button. You can just press I believe it's the A button, and it recenters you. So if you're slightly off, or if you need to move forward, like I'm actually going to do now because I'm at the back of my play space. So I'm going to move forward, reposition, and there we go. So that also works if you're, let's say you need to look down there, but you don't want to like stress your back out. You can just sort of sit up a little bit, and then now you can not have to throw your back out just to look down at something. And the same thing goes with looking up. If you need to see the switches, you can just recenter a little bit higher and not have to stretch so much. So doing that with the panels actually just reminded me, the tutorial never mentions anything of it, but there's these little light switches, and you can turn them on and off. I don't know really what that one does. It seems to affect lighting somehow. I don't know if it's like a glow behind the letters and all that, but it does kind of make some of these easier to see because the letters are glowing. So like that one says access, that one says force, that one says mode, which was slightly hard to read. Well, not so much. In certain conditions, like see how there's a lot of light right there. In certain conditions where you're facing the sun and there's a lot of light coming in, it can make things hard to read, so you might want to turn the lights off then. But that side note over. So let's do the target. Let's select our target.
On this screen, you will be able to see all the available targets. For now, we want to select the ISS.
And these are, I don't know if you'd call them dynamic controls or whatever, but it's where the computer screen changes and you just press the button that's near the option. So like this is, I think that's down and this is up. And select. Those
Confirm
can't really
selection
read.
with the button
Kind of
on the
just
bottom
guessing
right
with
of the
those because
computer.
again you fade out when you get too close. So just be aware of that. The text on the screen is kind of hard to read as well. That says ISS. I think that one above it, yeah, that says Earth. So we'll select the ISS.
Target selected. Pilot, find the floppy disk with the proximity training program and load it in the computer.
Guessing this one? This is the only other one.
First, we'll learn how to rotate the ship.
Oh, that real quick, that's another thing. So you can't
Move the
read the
joystick in
floppies
all directions.
when they're
In
on
order
the
to
thing,
rotate
the
ship.
floppy sticky area, because it fades out like that. But and you also can't read them while they're in your hand. But if you stick them to the screen, then you can get close enough. Training, yeah, EPU. So you can read that. Now it wants me to practice using the joystick. I think, right? Yes, move the joystick to right, left, up and down. Okay. So move right. Okay, move left. Up and down. Cool. Did the
Okay,
things.
now close the visor of your helmet.
Finally, we get to
When
close our
closed, it'll
visor.
display important tools for navigation. The square in your visor
There we go.
shows the location of your target.
Square.
The crosshair shows the front
What's
direction
square?
of the ship.
Oh, up. Okay. So now here's
Use
the part.
joystick to point the ship directly
I'll let
at
that
your target.
finish.
The joystick
Okay.
now applies low
No.
force.
You still going?
If you want,
Now this,
use
I
the
think,
joystick
is
to point
where.
the ship directly at your target.
Do you mind, computer? Oh my gosh. I'm gonna take out your hard drive. This is where I think the game falls short the hardest. The flight UI. And let me demonstrate why. So you see that tiny little oh, it's gonna start talking again if I do that. You see that tiny little square? That's the target square. So that's whenever you select a target or it's telling you to go to a certain location, that's what it wants you to aim at. That square though is way off in the distance and it's really small, because that's generally how heads-up displays work. They make it look like it's in the real world. Even in real life, that's how they work. So you can't get close to them, one, because of the fading thing, but also if you could, you'd need to walk like 200 feet out that way. The other thing, which you'll see in a second, is the crosshair is also rather hard to see because it's just this tiny little crosshair. And I'm not really sure what they can do about that other than maybe have an option to make it larger, make it like an optional thing. That way people who want this realistic sort of experience can have it. But in the accessibility section, people who need it to be larger can have it, and sacrifice that bit of realism and quality for actual playability. So let's try to line this up. Did I do it?
Good.
There we go, I did it.
Now
Here's the other part of the crosshair that I said you'll see in a second. We're going to see that now. And that is the
bars
drift
attached to the
indicators.
cockpit show your movement in relation to the
So now it's
target.
explaining about the bars, and I can just
Now look
barely
to the
see
right.
those. That the one
On your
on the
visor
right
display,
looks
you will notice
ever
the
so
circle.
slightly longer.
The circle
and that's what
shows
it's
the direction
explaining.
of your movement. Now
There's also
move the
a
joystick
circle,
to the left.
I guess.
You will
I don't
notice
see where the circle is,
also
though.
moves, showing the direction of
I
your
think it's
flight.
somewhere out there. You can see it through the ship. That's how the UI works. That wants us to move the stick left.
See how the circle also moves left.
And the circle also
It will
moved
always
left,
show
apparently.
the
Oh, yep,
direction
there it
of your
is.
movement.
So that's your... It's saying that's
Use
your
the
direction
joystick to
indicator.
eliminate the
So
drift,
right now we're drifting left, so
represented
the,
by the bars attached to
circle
the
is over
crosshair.
there left. I don't know, maybe they could simply make that bigger, or make the drift indicators along with the marker bigger, or maybe even put some little, I don't know, some little display here somewhere. Like how they have this little speed indicator and distance indicator. Something like that, just to tell you, you know, even if it's just a little dot that's on like a cross shape to tell you which direction you're moving, would really help, because I think even people with, you know, with glasses, with a high enough prescription might have a lot of trouble with that.
Okay,
Okay,
now
that's what it wanted us to do. It wanted us to eliminate the drift, and that was actually kind of difficult.
Grab it and pull it towards you.
Okay,
Don't
now we're
worry,
talking about
we've
thrust.
limited your speed now, so you won't go too fast.
And the thrust is pretty
Fly in the other
easy,
direction than you look.
because there's
An
this
arrow will point you to the circle.
velocity screen right
Now
there.
push the thruster
And now we're
forward.
going very
Slow
slow.
down and get some forward speed.
Now we're gonna move forward.
Now let's try out the handbrake.
Now it wants us to do the handbrake, which is gonna
It's a great invention.
basically velocity match us to that station. But I want to real quick tell you about that circle that was up to the left. Now it's out in front of us since we're moving forward, and it does kind of make it a little easier to eliminate the drift. You just have to put it on top of the circle, or put the circle on top of your crosshair. See, so it's not as difficult with just using the lines, but it's still pretty difficult. So we're going to use the brake.
You can now practice
They asked.
when you are ready to move on.
gonna
Press next button.
Match our speed to 0, relatively. And now we're going to move on.
On the right side of the computer, you see the alignment panel with the nav ball. This tool will help
Alignment
you
panel
orient
over here
yourself
with the
in
ball
space.
on it. That's what it's telling us
The
about.
buttons below the nav ball control which direction is shown on the nav ball.
And it's talking about these buttons.
For
Now
now,
these
we want to
buttons,
see where the
just like the
target is.
computer buttons,
So press
these
the
I would say
button.
these are actually a bit harder to read, because it's like a yellowish white. It's like an off-white on this gray. So without that square there, I wouldn't really know what button to hit. I think that one says TAR for target. Don't really know what these other one says. That one says Pro. NOR. Yeah, I don't know. These are really hard to read. RET is that center one on the bottom. And so, yeah, you can imagine if you're trying to do some sort of maneuver and you're having to look really close, you aren't unable to pay attention to anything else except this. So
Below the nav
that's
ball,
kind of an
you will
issue.
also notice a single switch.
I don't really
This
know
will lock your rotation
of a
to
solution for that,
current
but it's just
direction.
something to be aware of.
Switch it on.
It's telling us to switch this on. That's a nice little feature that keeps you locked to your position once you're there.
Remember to switch to the
Switch back to rotation
rotation mode. in order
mode.
to do that.
This is kind of nice though. So let me see if I can find it. So see that target square again, way over there? So if it's somewhere over there or behind you, it'll still show up, but you might not be able to see it. I certainly am not able to. Oop. Look at them go. This though will tell you where to go. It'll tell you which way to point. We need to go up a bit.
Use the joystick.
There we go,
to
and
point
it'll lock
it.
us
Okay,
right to it.
pilot. Time to approach
Okay.
the target.
So
You've
now it
limited
wants us to
your
give us
speed
some
now,
thrust.
so you won't go too fast.
We're only going 2. See
Great.
that circle's out in
Moving
front of us
forward.
again, so we did a terrible
Notice
job
the
at eliminating
vertical
drift,
bar
so
on the
let's
left of
just
your visor. It shows your speed
fix
towards
that.
the target.
Here we go.
This information
little
is
better.
also displayed above the computer.
And now this part is actually relatively easy, because all you need to do is pay attention to these two numbers.
Slow down either by
Right, the bigger this
applying
number is,
backward
the
thrust
faster this
or
number
using the
goes.
handbrake.
And when this number gets small, this number also needs to be super small. And that's where this comes in, the handbrake. So as we approach 100, and once it's lined up, let me correct a little bit. There we go, we're coming to 100.
Pilot, slow down.
Now let's crank the handbrake.
You should see the Soyuz in front of you.
Now it says we should see the Soyuz in front of us. I'm assuming somebody not blind would be able to see the Soyuz, but I cannot. So we're gonna go ahead and
Yellow and looks like a gun with a screen.
ooh, get really close. There we go. Now I can see the
Tap on those
Soyuz.
little red lamps in order to be more visible. Try to scan a hatch by
let's
pointing the
switch
scanning
that to
gun
low.
toward it.
There we go. That seems safer. Alright, now it's talking about the scanning gun. You need this to, well, scan things. You need it to, if you want to dock with something, or if the mission is instructing you to locate a problem or point out anything anomalous, you're going to need to point the scanning gun at it. Now it's saying something about red lamps. No idea what it's talking about, red lamps. So my method is to just...
You got it. Remember,
There we
you
go.
always need
I
to
somehow
scan a
got it.
hatch before-
Okay, so it wants us to enter the docking corridor. Doesn't really tell us how, except to just get there, by flying into it. So, this is where we gotta use our own knowledge. Let's set it
Fly
to
inside the docking corridor to start the docking
rotate.
procedure.
Okay, let's go there. Set it back to translate. Let's move up. Ooh! There we go. It's a little faster than I intended. Seeing with close proximity, things like this, it's really easy to tell what you're doing because everything is shifting around you.
Fly in.
Unfortunately,
Almost
that's
there.
kind of dangerous.
Now make sure that you will
So you might blow up if you're not
disable
careful.
auto-alarm switch under the energy vault.
So let's
You
do
don't want
that.
the ship to rotate while you dock.
I've already disabled the auto align switch as it's
That's
instructing
it.
me.
You are now in position to begin the docking procedure.
And there's a
Move
big
to the back of the spaceship.
docking circle, an area. So now it wants us to move to the back of the station for the fun part. Don't worry, those alarms are necessary. It's just docking. Now this part is actually pretty easy too. All you gotta do is turn the number screen.
Delicate and dangerous process, so we need you to be concentrated.
So let's make sure this is at
In front
high
of you,
for now,
you can see a Soyuz capsule.
and rotate.
The bigger screen, located in front of you, shows the main docking data. The smaller screen and the data pad on your left show instructions.
So these are instructions just like the data
First,
pad
we
up
need to
front.
rotate the ship to
And this is the
correct
screen that you
angles.
want. And let's just ignore the
Use
tutorial
the right
and
joystick to change your
do the
rotation.
thing. So, oop, and it makes a little blink when you're close, and it's kind of generous. It's a pretty small margin of error, but I don't think you have to be exact. Yeah, see, that's definitely a different number, and it's still green. So as long as you're pretty close, let's see, which way does it? That way. Okay, those two numbers are green. Now it wants me to roll the ship. Now, as far as I can tell, there's no way to tell which way it wants you to rotate. So you might be really close and only need to rotate a little bit to the right, but you end up rotating 360 degrees to the left, like I kind of just did. So now all those are green. So let's switch over to translate.
You need the hatches to be
Okay.
aligned. The horizontal and vertical alignment are controlled by the right joystick. You can control your alignment with the right joystick.
The alignment. And this part's relatively simple as well. It's just the same thing, but you're moving vertically and horizontally.
The left joystick controls your
And the nice thing about docking is when you let go of the stick, it slows down
Approach target using the left joystick.
on its own. So like right now we're still matched relatively with the station, and then we just push forward to dock.
The mating lock switch is located on the right of
Go.
the docking panel.
Docking,
Switch it on.
those lights turning green.
Docking
Switch
sequence
that on.
complete.
Now all the lights are green. We did it. We didn't crash. And there is an
Now capable.
alarm appeared. It's the same alarm that was up on the thing.
Ready to face
Life
the
support.
space.
Although there's a few extra lights here.
And check the checklist
I don't know what those do.
procedure.
You can silence the alarm though, and here's your basic life support stuff. You gotta get real close to that to see it though. It's much smaller than the large
You will be able to
gauges
pick
up
the
on the life
when
support.
you're back on Earth.
See, it's not even a quarter the size of my hand. So I don't really pay attention to those. But yeah, look, there we go. We did it. And that is Interkosmos 2000. That's pretty much all I have to say in regard to accessibility as well. There's a lot of good, there's some bad, things that they can improve on, things I'm not really sure how or if they can be improved on. Sometimes things are just a fact of life. Visually impaired gamers know this all too well. Some things are just inherent with being visually impaired and also a gamer. Hopefully things, in the future, or maybe there'll be other solutions, but for now we just sort of work around them and do the best we can. But this game is a pretty fun game. As I said, it's really short, so I didn't want to show anything in the story, but as you can see, once we've done the tutorial, you can move on to the actual missions. Overall, I would say I'd give this a solid 6 out of 10 in regards to accessibility. It's sort of iffy, but I would say give it a chance. Right? It's not quite coin flip. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. It probably can work for you if you have maybe a really high prescription glasses, or if you're as blind as I am, which is like beyond the legally blind definition, technically just actually blind. You still might be able to play this game, so I would say look into it a little more, and just take a chance. If anything, if you can't play it, the Oculus refund policy is always a thing. But also, maybe try talking to the developers on their Discord. They are really nice, and I'm sure they'll take any advice you have into consideration. But anyway, that's all for this video. This has been Interkosmos 2000, and as it turns out, blind people can be astronauts. If you want to see more content, please subscribe. If you like this video, why not give it a like, and give it a comment, and maybe share it with your friends, and maybe a blind friend that you might have, or not, who knows. But anyway, I'm Helix, that's all for now, and I'll see you in the next one.